committed the worst sin that you can commit for me, which is it bored me. It bored me. It was a chore and a struggle to watch this movie. Never expected that it would do that, because, like I said, I am not hard to please. If I see somebody trying, I'll enjoy something.
This is Hacking It with Dan Allen and Robert Cavalier.
Let's talk about our preconceived excitement, notions, and excitement about this movie. Why did we want to watch this movie?
Well, I was excited about it because it sounded like it was an agenda-free, speculative take on what would happen if our current political climate got to the point where all hell breaks loose. What would that look like?
Was it that your first reaction watching that trailer? Is that the first thing you thought, or did you not think that this was about a civil war?
No, I knew it was about a civil war. And what I read was that Texas and California basically take on the rest of the United States, which is a clear signal that the movie's not trying to pit, liberals against conservatives here, because obviously there would have to be a lot of things that would have to change in the dynamics and the demographics of our country for Texas and California to take the same sides in a civil war. So I figured it would be, I was hoping it would not be about specific politics today, but more like what would happen if things continue to get to the point where violence breaks out. So it did live up to that promise. At least.
It's I recall watching this trailer. I just watched the trailer. I didn't go into anything. For some reason, I didn't think I needed to do that. I normally do. I didn't want to spoil anything for me, so I didn't do that. Which is, I went into it totally blind. So yes, I don't think that's totally unmarred by information on your side. I think we were both expecting something that we could use to talk about, that we could link to some of the things that we're interested about. It's speculative fiction, and in speculative fiction, you'd figure there'd be something that is said about something. When you watch 1984, it's a political movie, no matter what you think. When you watch, there are predecessors to these movies, war photography movies like Welcome to Sarajevo back in the 90s with Woody Harrelson and some other people. Big shots, actually, a lot of big shots in that movie. Not a good movie. Welcome to Sarajevo. A lot of the criticism, and I agree with it. I watched it a long time ago. It goes all over the place. In a nutshell, it's kind of like this movie. It starts out with some premise, and then it kind of goes into they rescue an orphanage person, and then there are these long trips on a bus. I can definitely tell you that I think some of these movies are feeding off of what preceded them. That's how Hollywood kind of works. Who is this guy? Who directed this? Garland. Last name is Garland. I know this director. One of the movies he's made.
Is it Alex Garland?
Yeah, it's Alex Garland. He but you knew that, right?
I knew.
I ain't gonna reach in through this microphone and I'm gonna war photography you. But the thing is that
Alex Garland is known for a lot of edgy genre films like Ex Machina, 28 Days Later.
Have you seen those
Sunshine?
Movies?
I've seen
Ex Machina and Annihilation.
I've seen Sunshine.
I have not seen Sunshine. I haven't gotten to that. I've heard about it. Alex Garland also, I think, he made 28 Days Later. So he kind of is a zombie movie guy.
Yep.
What I get from each of these movies, and I liked all of them for different reasons. These last three that I mentioned, 28 Days Later is, preposterous zombie movie that I think it unleashes in England the reawakening of the zombie movies from way back in the 60s and 70s. And then you get I don't know what order it goes, but Annihilation and Ex Machina. Ex Machina, all of these movies are small in some way. So that's a big takeaway for me. Annihilation is doesn't seem small, but it is small. It's a very good movie in what it that it's focused on its weirdness, on the strangeness of an encounter with an alien and with an alien life form, with alien life processes happening and changing and mutating the reality as you enter it. It's really well done. And the other one, Ex Machina, same thing. You enter into a small set, into a world. It's all happening in very small things. Garland is a small picture kind of guy. He's not a big picture. That's my takeaway. To be a big picture guy, to do broad strokes, to do big themes, that is a whole different thing. It really led me to think, oh, some people you just cannot teach to be what they call these world builders. I don't know why I don't like that. But you take someone like Peter Jackson, you take someone like that, and they have the talent to bring it to screen in a way that very few people can. I could say the same thing about David Lynch, even though he disowned his work, and I disagree. That's a theme for another day. But these are big ideas, big thinkers, big worlds, and you live with them for many, many years. Tolkien, as a writer, didn't write Lord of the Rings just because somebody commissioned him to. Nobody asked him to do it. He just did it for years and years and years, making up the languages and the society, all kinds of things for a long time. Same thing with most speculative writers. And I like to use the term speculative because science fiction tends to be not an adequate term enough. This is speculative fiction. It falls under the science fiction, this movie, because it doesn't take place in the present. It takes place in a future that's like 30 years from now. Yet somehow they're still using SLRs that we used 20 years ago. I don't know. We'll get to that later. But this movie stars Kirsten Dunst, and Kirsten Dunst is superb in it. She looks beautiful. She just everything that she does is well done. She doesn't ever smile except for one scene, which is a beautiful smile, and I really like that. And that's important for a reason we'll get to later. So, what happens in this movie? Let's go. Let's talk it down. How does it start?
Well, it starts off with these reporters who are wanting to get to DC and interview the president before the rebellion gets there first, and they want a chance to be able to actually ask him honest questions, but they're given the feedback that this is not going to happen. They would never let you talk to him. They certainly wouldn't let you ask him any kind of controversial questions, but it seems like Kristen Dunst's character is supposed to be like at the height of her career. I mean, she's basically a living legend as a photographer. And so it seems like that is just the next natural progressive step for her place in this war is to bring the truth.
That's great. That's a great synopsis of the start. And that's the stake. Those are the stakes in this movie. Supposedly, the whole world has reached. Well, not the whole world. I guess just the United States. I don't know what's happening in the world. In fact, I don't know very much about this world in this movie. Almost nothing. So, yes, the stakes are that high. Just an interview. A lot of the criticisms. Once I watched this movie, and it took me. It was a hard one. I got to say, an experience to watching that first scene. There is really no beginning. It just starts sort of in medias res. It just starts. There's no prefacing. There's nothing. Just the only little bit of an inkling of a preface was the speech by the president, and that's it. And you sort of think, okay, well, this is a little strange. What's going to happen? Here we go. Let's go, movie. Boom. There's a protest, and Kristen Dunst's character is filming it. I think her name is Lee Smith. She sees the girl. It's got to rescue her, and then we she has that maternal instinct or some protectiveness that will become a theme in the entire movie. And then that's it. We're in the next move. Very quickly, she's part of the movie. She's part of the plot. So when I watched this movie, I was like, and I'm a very forgiving guy. I am very forgiving. This movie's not gonna be about me just crapping on this movie the whole time. But I gotta say that this was a hard one to watch. Hard movie. One of the longest experiences, and I'm glad that you had a different experience because that'll be a great balance. because for me, this is at the center of what is going on with. It made me think about movie making, writing, and everything, and why we have worked ourselves into a fine point, the edge, which is really just a corner. Actually, what am I talking about? We painted ourselves into a corner creatively, when an entire movie is taking place through the point of view of a very low stake group who's bringing, I guess, the truth with a capital T. Sounds very very self-aggrandizing for this group of war or photographers, of journalists, because journalists obviously always tell us the truth, right? That's what they do. They don't ever lie to us, or they're never owned by corporations. They're never used by any parties to promote one side more than the other, because they're completely objective. That's what they do. We know this. It's
Well,
always
that's what they're supposed to do.
so. The mystery is very problematic for me, because here's the thing. I turned to the only people I could turn, because after watching this, I was like, "Wow, took for forever." It committed the worst sin that you can commit for me, which is it bored me. It bored me. It was a chore and a struggle to watch this movie. Never expected that it would do that, because, like I said, I am not hard to please. If I see somebody trying, I'll enjoy something. I did enjoy Kristen Dunst's acting. I thought she did whatever they asked her to do, and brought in a good element. They don't know how this thing is going to be crafted. But I want to ask you something about script writing, and about sort of functional script writing, and how exposition, because that's one of the big reviews, and we can turn to IMDb. I'd like to share a few that I think I connected well with some of the reactions and the reviews. And so you like to write as well. What do you think? And you've asked me. You've thought, well, exposition is where I struggle. Is exposition? How do you bring in? How does this movie do exposition? What exposition is there?
I think I think that is one of the intentional things that the filmmaker Garland is omitted. He omitted exposition. I mean,
No, there
I
is
think
exposition. There is exposition.
there
How
is,
do you
but I
do it?
mean, outside of just the little bit from what the president says, a little bit from the broadcasting that they hear in the background, a little bit about their conversations, but there is
There is
so little exposition. Like
there is
you're going.
exposition. It just happens through the very convenient character of the ingenue, the newbie.
Oh yeah,
She's got to ask the question. She doesn't know anything. They got to explain
correct.
them.
Yes,
That's
yes,
how
and that
exposition is. I'm not talking about the vision and the intent of the
gotcha.
director. I'm talking about the actual mechanical function in this movie, and how they use it. They have to tell us something, and they do it through these little clips that happen, little bits of dialogue that happen. Mostly the old guy with the girl, and there's definitely information that's given in parts that take place, sprinkled throughout the script.
Correct.
I think right before they go to the gas station. I think that's or right at that point, that's where they're sharing information about what the geography looks like, how hard this trip's going to be, the mechanics of it. It's one of the criticisms that I bumped into a lot about for this movie was that there's no plot. A lot of the reviews, no plot, no plot, no plot, no plot, one after another, and I think that's an interesting, because a lot of people, they're not trained in these terms, and they don't know what plot means. Of course, there's a plot, but what I think people are saying is that they don't understand the stakes. They're not connecting with these characters. They find them very hollow, very. And you can open up IMDb already, one after another.
Well, yeah, I did look at some of those reviews, and some of those reviews are warranted. Some of the criticisms of the characters is that some of them are very stereotypical. Some of the events that happen in the plot are very predictable. When I watched this with my wife, she predicted what would happen at the end of the movie based upon a conversation between Lee, Kristen Dunst's
Oh yeah,
character, and the young reporter.
I find it very interesting that the movie was centered on photographers. That's the movie, because it's a very difficult thing to do, to tell a movie through someone that's taking a picture of something else. And I don't think it's intentional, but it could have been that this war voyeurism to me, it parallels what people of the present usually do with these kinds of things. They never stand there just watching, eating popcorn, watching things. That's what people do. The modern age, most directors, and you can find good articles on this, they feel very uncomfortable filming people of the present because the people of the present era are always glued to their phones. They're very uninteresting to film. It's very uninteresting to film people and very problematic for most directors to film people on their phones and looking at media.
Yeah, that's why we
So
get so many movies that are taking place in the 80s, so many TV
yeah,
shows taking place in the 80s.
80s or 90s, or in this case, a movie in which they don't, they definitely don't bring him, into action. There's not anything of that. There's hardly, they don't even take video. It's weird. They don't take video. I don't know. Maybe they
Well,
do.
there's so many technical limitations because of the war, I think, which it kind of reduces. I mean, it's even though it's just, a couple decades and supposed to be a couple decades in the future. So I had a different take on
Oh
it.
yeah.
It came across to me as a post-apocalyptic. Well, it's like what happens right before the post-apocalyptic movies take place. This happens. Something like this has to happen, and it gets this ugly before you have, all these post-apocalyptic settings that we
This
see.
movie is so unapocalyptic. This movie is about ambivalence. This movie's been compared to Apocalypse Now, and I guess loosely you could say that it is because Apocalypse Now is about an odyssey. It's about a trip. This is a road trip movie too, for a big part of its of how it unfolds. It's a road trip. But other than that, it's not Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now, we understand. We actually see the
No.
more nuanced representation of not only Kurt, Marlon Brando's character, but we see the man that's changing in response to this trip, what he's seeing and what he was. It's just a splayed out nothing. It's one of the most perfect movies that you can watch. It is, and there's a little in there too, which is Dennis Hopper. Amazing, it's little talk in there. That is a great movie. This is not Apocalypse Now, and that's what people were saying, and that's fine. That's one of those things. I think that you think Kristen Dunst going to get the Oscar nomination on this one?
I mean, I think she could. I think.
What do you think?
Well, I think if anybody's viewing this as a war movie, I think that misses the mark. I think you said something that I think that is actually closer to what it's about. You talked about voyeurism. You talked about people being glued to their phones. I think this is an allegory of today. I think it's an indictment of our social media and our media culture today, because it's about.
That's what it's do. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely.
Because what it does, I think, really well is that it shows how do you maintain your soul when you're taking pictures of people who are dying in front of you.
You can't make a soulful movie about soulless people. It's not interesting. There's conundrum.
Yeah, but I think this is and I think it's the characters some of the characters could have been done better.
Anything. They don't stand for anything. Why do I care that they have a meaningless interview with someone? For what reason? It's nothing. It's an absolute.
Yeah, but no. But it has to do with what it represents. Like why she wants to go there and talk to the president, because this is supposed to be the symbol of democracy. If whatever the president is doing or whatever happens to the president, so it's about the symbolism of our country. And it shows how what I found fascinating was how these characters, you take the young photographer, whom I was not a fan of in terms of casting. Her name is Kaylee Spaney as Jessie Cullen.
Elvis movie, right?
Yeah, she looks like 15 years old. That was just threw me off.
Beautiful actress, but she is very and she was made to look as and she's short, and she's short stature. So yes, she looks like a little girl in this movie.
Yeah,
she looks like a 14-year-old girl. She doesn't look.
Yeah, I didn't like that. But anyways,
I didn't mind that, but I think that's a valid observation from people that also said so. I don't know about miscasting. I think this is all directing. All of this movie to me. And let's talk about some meaningful scenes. You go, and let me actually go back. Yes, it's not good. The promotional aspect of this movie is the most deceptive that I've ever seen in my life, and I don't like that because it's supposed to be about honesty, and these people aren't even being honest about how they're presenting the movie. So that's really a piece of crap. You don't go to let's say, hey, this movie's called OK Corral. Okay, great. Oh no, it's actually about the townspeople that create all the things, all the fences at the OK Corral, and they really got to get the wood for the OK Corral to be an OK Corral. That's what we're gonna do. It's a footnote on a footnote on a footnote. A long time ago, when I was a college student, I remember taking art history. Not it wasn't art history. It was a humanities class. It was actually an amazing class. I still have the book. And one of the things that I discovered through that and through the professor was that we're focusing on Egypt, and even though I don't know why I hadn't thought of it, it's like, guys, what this was back in its day, it was art. It wasn't what we think of it now, which is relics. It was a living. It wasn't myth. It was a living religion. It was a living worldview, and this is what remains of that. And what's interesting about it is that what she says is like, when we start through the thousands of years of that civilization, is with a very realistic representation of figures and things. And people, I was like, that blew my mind. Really? I didn't know that they were. It's like, first she kind of tested us. What do you think? When do you think this came, at the end or at the beginning? And then we all thought, toward the end, because we kind of perceived an evolution of visual representation as starting out pretty abstract and then evolving to more realistic representations. But in fact, it's the opposite in Egyptian. And in fact, it's the opposite in many, according to what we studied, in many civilizations. They start out with as realistic as they can represent their world, and then they move into abstractions. Once you get to the real end, the abstractions are so abstracted that they're so difficult to decipher, which is why we have so many mysteries with Egyptian figurines and the thoughts. It's very difficult. We're at that stage now also, because we have moved away from language into these emoji-conny thingies. Nothing can be said now anymore because we don't use the nuance of speech. We use these visuals. And if somebody were to uncover one, what the heck does that mean? That thing, that arm thing, or that weird looking face? We're heading into an abstraction. Where am I going with this? This kind of, as you call it, intentional thing is a piece of crap for me. I hate things like this because I feel that they're trying to play the center, the comfortable spaces, and I don't like the comfortable spaces. I call that just being a wuss, making a jackass out of me too, because I'm hoping here for something saying, okay, here we go, we're going to be about something, but instead we're going to be about, hey, we're smarter than you. The movie's trying to be smarter than itself, and I find it very, very pretentious. That's my knee-jerk reaction as I watched it. I was like, what is this thing? It's boring me to death. First of all, that's the worst part of it. The boredom, the going along in the long rides. I was like, oof, okay, we better get there, I guess. It's gonna be another sitting around. Here's the pattern: sitting around talking, just like in the very first scene, and then driving somewhere, taking some pictures, and then talking some more, and then again and again and again throughout the whole entire movie.
So I take it that you're probably more dissatisfied with the marketing of it than
Both,
what
actually.
it was. I mean, because here's the thing: there was a movie that came out back in the earlier 2000s, Brad Pitt movie about Jesse James, and you mentioning Tombstone and the OK Corral reminded me of that. It was called The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. And just the title, well, I know it's a pretentious title because it's a pretentious movie. It's kind of an art house movie. You're not supposed to go to that expecting showdown at the OK Corral. This movie, the marketing of it, the poster of it looks like it's a war film. So I can see the mistake. But when I started watching, I could tell very quickly, like you did, that, okay, this is not the movie that maybe it cracked itself up to be.
That would have been fine. And even if I knew right away, okay, this is our central characters. This is not going to be, I knew as quickly as probably you did, that it wasn't going to be a civil war, a movie that enters a civil war and we see things played out, and we have maybe an embedded crew with some troops, which these guys are not embedded, and somehow they there's a lot of there. The one thing that it will always get me going, and it will always disappoint me about anything I read or anything I watch or anything I do or anything I see done artistically, is people winging it. And this is a movie where nothing is very much thought out, and it's not thought out. I'm not talking about you,
disagree.
but it's not thought out well. Come on, Cisco.
Wait,
I'm gonna be Cisco. You're gonna be Ebert. Come on, Roger Ebert. No, it's fine. I'm
like this. I'm Cisco. I'm the bald guy.
You want to be Cisco?
I'm the bald guy.
All right. I'm gonna fat right now. We got some. I just give you Roger because I feel like he's pretty much even more famous, like smarter maybe. I don't know. Both are pretty smart.
They're good.
But those were from the golden age of our watching movies.
Rest in peace.
Man, we can talk about none of these movies, and those were movies that were gutsy. You don't see movies anymore, and I interpret and apologize. I'm gonna let you go back to your point, but we don't see movies that have guts. We don't see movies like, say, one art housey type movie was Manhattan. A long time ago, you probably saw that with we saw political movies, we saw criminal movies, we saw thrillers that had thoughts that were about something. Man, they had punch. What was that? I'll remind you of many movies that you can watch in the 90s and the early 2000s, but especially in the 90s. I went to a long diatribe. What was it that I interrupted?
I think there was too much thought put into it.
Okay, I like that.
It was a writer's movie. He wanted to make the point that, like, the very end of the movie, which is absolutely, it is preposterous that the White House is so poorly guarded. I mean, they would be launching nukes at armed forces if they got that. And I guarantee you, there is a bunker underneath the White House and a tunnel system. So the president is not going to be sitting in the Oval Office waiting with just a few office staff with machine guns. That was ridiculous.
And Dan, I'm not going to become petty and nitpick at all the things that, because I know that this is not that movie. If it were that movie, I would definitely nitpick, like, wait a minute, why are they using SLR? So there's obvious intentions for why are they not using drones? And right now to be a war photographer, you send a drone, baby, takes all the pictures you want. You don't have to die in there.
No, absolutely. That being said, that it is so well thought out in terms of the statement it wants to make, which is that people are losing their
podcast right now. Let's go, baby.
People are losing their souls in our culture of voyeurism. People are losing their souls in the culture of voyeurism. People, how many times, like, so if you look at YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, what do you see all the time, or Twitter, which is the garbage heap of them all? You see all these videos of violence, of people getting hurt, getting killed, getting arrested in fights, all this kind of stuff. And I think this movie is a metaphor about that. And how do you maintain your soul when you're exposed to so many scenes of violence all the time? If you look at the video, or just at the news routinely, at the wars in Ukraine, the war in Israel, what does that do to your soul? Well, if you start off as this young, plucky photojournalist, like the character at the beginning of the movie is, she's excited, but she's also disturbed, and so she goes through this process where she's exposed to violent scene after violent scene, and Kristen Dunst's character Lee is there to kind of comfort her. But there's this weird moment where this is a turning point. And I didn't know exactly where it was going, where the young journalist says that, I've never felt so alive when I took those pictures.
Yeah, that's so corny.
That's a weird thing to say when you're seeing dead bodies, all this gratuitous violence
that I've ever had in a long time. That is the corniest placed piece of writing. Because we need to tell this, you need to show, which you did in that scene. It was out of place and
show instead of tell. Yeah, writing wise,
that, and acting wise, and I don't blame her that much. But maybe I do blame her. I don't know. Maybe she couldn't spin. I have no idea what the elements would have been that made that scene so awkward. But that's towards the end. Let's go back. Let's go talk about that scene So they're on the road. Boom. They got to get from A to B, and in between them, there's a bunch of little things that happen, a little crazy, no stupidity, like the girl jumping into the other car, which had me like, get out of here. And it's just like just stupidity. And those two guys were supposed to kind of bring in vivacity. Look how crazy these war photographers are, and they're just death wishing. It's interesting because it is a form of sarcasm of the movie, a form of satire, I think, almost about what adrenaline junkies personally could do this. But let's talk about that marketing piece in the movie, the trailer. Actually, that was where we're getting to. Finally, those guys they pull ahead. There was so let me for somebody who hasn't really seen this movie. There's at some point, and if you haven't seen it, watch the movie. Or actually, I wouldn't recommend it, but go ahead if you want to. If you want to, don't pay for it like we did. Oh my god. But so they go and then they're looking for actually you tell it what happens because I'm kind of messing up. So they go they're they're on the road. There's a car behind them and it seems like it's racing towards them. And these two guys and these two photographers and they happen to know each other and a bunch of laughs and hijinks. And then they do what they do what, Dan? They pull
They
ahead.
run into well,
They pull ahead and they're looking for him, right?
so the two journalists. So this is an example of I don't well these two journalists who are racing around and that they switch cars with the young journalist. They are there strictly for a plot point, and you know that because their characters are so flat, so static. So there's nothing to their characters. They're just, like you said, adrenaline junkies. There's nothing of their humanity. So you can almost predict that, yes, they will. You could tell, you could feel these guys are going to die, and they might take out the young journalist as well with them because the audience is going to feel nothing. If you felt nothing towards the other
Well,
main characters, you're not going to feel anything towards them. So when they kill the first guy,
well,
you know
wait.
the other guy's going to
We're
die.
getting ahead. Let's go more linearly. The girl jumps into the car, so she jumps in the car, and then they're lost. And Kristen Dunst, she's playing, protective. She didn't want her. She's a reluctant mother, I guess. But now she's look. We got to find them, right? Where are they? This is not funny anymore, right? Remember that? And then they do find them and they pull up and then whoa, what's happening? That's when we start our scene. That's the scene that marketed this movie. This is the gravity of this movie and where we think, okay, we're in a mess now. We're meeting a guy. By the way, that's Kristen Dunst's husband that plays the main, I guess, the leader of that little rogue soldiers thing. So we're seeing what we see is what, Dan? They're unloading bodies. So the body's full with people that look ethnically Asian, mostly to me, or different races. It just stands out. They're powdered. They're kind of shoved into a hole, and they're gonna bury them, and they're gonna they're pouring lye on them. I would think something to hold off the smell of all of these people, and that's when our characters kind of and they're ready to do what they're getting ready as far as the characters are concerned. Because we're watching in the background, and this is a pivotal moment because the elder editor guy, Sammy, journalist guy, he's telling him, no, I sense death here. This is not a good idea. This is a turning point. Do not do this. Well, you're old. You can stay behind. They kind of mock him a little bit. He actually doesn't join. He does stay back. It's a good ex machina moment for him later on. But they go forward and they're outraged by what they're seeing. Oh my goodness. Because now they're really scared. And they're like, hey guys, no, don't. And very coolly, the guy that's carrying out the execute, like you think he's going to execute these two, they're going to get killed. And it's a really scary moment because now things have gotten really, really real. They could either just turn back, just like Kirsten Dunst, she could have just taken pictures of it, right? So we're at this scene. This is a very pivotal scene because there's a choice, there's a turning point. The turning point is you either stay behind and escape, and you know what, the girl and what's her name, she told her, if you make a dumb decision, you're on your own, right? She told her many times, you're
Yeah.
on your own. I'm going to leave you behind because you're going to weigh us down. We've got a mission to accomplish, a dumb mission in my point of view, but that's their mission. And then now she makes a very dumb decision, which is to go and try to persuade these people not to do what they're going to want to do, which is looks like they're going to execute them. They got them on their knees.
Yep.
He's watching them. And then there's this moment of where the air just thickens Tell us about that moment where the air just thickens because the blonde
Yeah.
um, soldier. Tell us, explicate that. Tell us a little bit what's going on in there.
Well, kill them. He asks them where they're from. He's looking to see if there's any reason why he shouldn't kill
What
them
are
at
you
all. He wants
feeling
to
when you're
rule out.
watching this guy? I mean, is he
Well,
nervous? Is he nervous?
no, he's completely relaxed. He's
He does.
completely got no conscience whatsoever.
I mean, we don't
And
really know that. Let's be fair. He just strikes you as a killer, and a person who's very
he's
calm with killing. And this is a civil war. This is what we do in war. We're not a murderer when you're in a war. You're doing your job as a soldier. We don't know the backstory of the
yeah.
other people that were
Well,
in the truckload. We don't know that. We don't know that those people could have perpetrated a million crimes and they finally got caught and finally got theirs. We don't know
well,
that because the movie doesn't tell us that.
but
All
it's
we
clear
know is,
that
go ahead.
there's nobody's following Geneva Conventions at all. So these are just killers.
What did that movie make, that moment make you feel with this guy? You're in that moment. Of course, you're tense. Everybody's like, they're unarmed. You're right there with them as a viewer, and it's starting to mean something because the guy, the soldier, is really threatening, and he's so dead calm. He comes across, let's just say it, as a conservative. He comes across as a conservative for sure. He comes across as somebody that has some views, and he's questioning him. Where are you
Correct.
from? A nativist, for sure. A nativist, he is, because he's saying,
Correct.
you're not American. These guys aren't American. You're American. We're all Americans here. There's a lot of messaging going on in there. This movie is not, the movie and the characters are definitely not objective, and there's no truth. The only thing that we get to see is somebody else's point of view, some outside forces point of view. This movie is so propped up that the characters are not natural. And that's one of the biggest flaws of this movie, and this terrible writing of this movie, was that it goes. So we're in this thing, and we're like, oh, now we're in the hell. That's it. That's it. The guy comes in and just drives him off, and he just, the editor guy just drives him into the hole. He just runs him over, and it's done. And then they go. He's hit. Then we see a real dumb scene with him dying, and the going through a devastated, like, burning area. And some music that's out of sync. It was just trying to be a little bit zen or something. It was really awful. And then that boring part takes place, and he does die. At some point, Kristen Dunst does take his picture. You doing all right?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, is mom here? Did your mother get here yet? No. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
He takes.
Yeah, no, I.
Picture. So she
But
takes a picture of him dead, and then she goes, and then they go into
deletes the
Rosary.
picture though. She deletes the picture.
Wait, I know she deletes the picture, but she goes to the Rosary, and right before that, they're all having this freak out, which is, they're yelling at the top of their lungs. One of the guys, and they're all just mortified because now the stakes have changed, because now it's something real happening. Now, horrors can happen to anybody else as long as it's your neighbor. It's fine as long as it's anybody else. But now that it's one of yours, now you're crying about it. Now you're taking a picture and you're gonna delete it, because guess what? Now it hurts you, but you have no conscience about taking a picture about somebody else dying, because
well, no,
you
but
don't. You don't.
yeah.
You take a picture.
Yes, no, you
I'm
don't.
talking to this photographer, this character right now, and I'm facing her. Hey, listen, you just took a picture of your friend dead, and it felt disgusting to you so much that you deleted it. So you're kind of a hypocrite, and you're facing your own hypocrisy.
No, she's not a hypocrite. No, this is why. It's because this is how she maintains her soul and maintains her integrity, but also hear me out here. Also maintains her professionalism, because wartime photojournalists, that is actually a very critical role in a war. I mean, think about some of those most iconic photographs coming out of Vietnam, where the guy is about to get shot in the head, and it's literally the split second before the gun is shot, and you see his reaction before he's assassinated. Those they play an important part. The question that the movie poses, whether or not this was the right genre for it, or the right setup or plot or whatever, is how do you do that and maintain your soul? She does, because she is able to separate her professionalism from herself, from her
I would
core
make an
self.
argument that in fact something has come back to haunt her, something that she's repressed, And here's what has been repressed: the idea of professionalism, the idea of an important role in as a war photographer, because it is not an important role. Most war photographers that are recruited as far as a youth that are embedded, they don't go into the battle scenes like that. You can check it out.
Yeah, no,
And let me tell you
I
something.
agree.
Let me tell you something. Not only
No,
do they
I
not go
agree.
like that, but if they for some reason are caught in the situation, they could get in the way of everything that's going on. There's no way they're going to be following like that. If they are embedded, it is because there is a reason for it. Mostly the reason is so that the narrative can be controlled by the military. This is a new phenomenon. We have war photographers from the Civil War era. A lot of it was for tactical reasons,
Well,
for historical reasons, but really there is no way that you're not going to win a war
no, and
because of
on the
a
battle,
photographer. So, but
right, and on the
here's what I'm saying
battlefield,
about
but
there is a hypocritical point here. And I will say hypocrisy, because if you're putting you're aggrandizing the role of a journalist as the bringer of truth. Why do we need this truth? What truth is there? What is the truth? It is trying to reach at a philosophical realm and never deals with it. The only way it deals with it is that, yes, I'm a photographer. I took a picture of my dying friend, and now I feel kind of disgusted by it. I'm going to delete it. This is no good. I'm going to apply a rule. Just hear me out. I'm going to apply a rule that I don't apply to anybody else. But it could be argued that that was the climax, that that's where the turning point happens in the character, that she unravels because now she, after having suppressed this part of her for so long, she doesn't at all maintain professional distance, like you said. In fact, it eats her up, and
yeah,
because
no,
maybe it haunts her, because there's
no,
a little bit of a scene way early when they're trying to show us, where she's been and the horror she's seen. It leaves you with nothing. It tells you nothing. And that's what these kind of violent situations are. Violence is like that. It doesn't really give you a payoff. It just wears on you and taxes you. But when you pretend that presenting these stories is somehow is very important for humanity, to document the ways in which we kill each other and in which we treat each other. It's not as if any of us didn't already know that. We've woken up to that a long
yeah,
time ago. We're a long way from jingoism, even though the media is still used very much in this way. Because if you look at the news about Ukraine, it is very interesting how a country could be simultaneously very, very, very victorious and successful in war, and also very, very much a victim that needs all the help in the world because of the bad wolf at the gates. So it's just like it's playing two things. But let me tell you something.
well, but
Here's the
no,
thing
no,
with this
yeah, but I
character.
think you got something. But I think you got something wrong about her emotional breakdown. This is and this was the thing that, at least this was my interpretation of it. Um, is that she is able to hold it together with every single moment of violence, every single loss along the way, whereas everybody else was starting to crumble. Um, at the very end, as they're approaching the White House,
Right.
she's starting to have a breakdown,
She has a breakdown.
whereas the young journalist girl,
Oh yeah,
she suddenly has no
ninja.
emotions.
Yeah.
As they're going into the White House, she takes a picture of everything. She takes a picture of Kristen Dunst's character dying without flinching, with barely looking back, and goes and takes a picture of the president dying.
There is a very
Here's the thing, but let me make my point. Let me make my point. The point is that she is having a reaction to seeing democracy fall. I think her reaction is far bigger. She's looking at everything from a much bigger point of view, and she's witnessing firsthand with her own eyes the fall of democracy. And that's what upsets her, that does not
but it
upset
already has
anybody else.
fallen. Well, there's been a war that's been carried out, and she's been taking a lot of. In fact, she's been taking a lot of pictures of the war, of
Yes,
all
but it's
kinds of violence.
different. But we thought that the White House was fine. That was never really put into that much of a question.
I went into this movie because it supposedly was going to fit into something that we were going to be working on, and now I found nothing. The movie is disappointing to me. It is exactly what I find bereft and soulless in art. This is what you call intentional, as teachers love to use that word. Oh God, I hate that word now. The thing is that this movie is not is playing with things it doesn't not only doesn't understand, it delivers nothing to us. So we get to the final scene. She chickens out. She puts herself in the place of the shot, even though that's the dumbest thing you could do because she would never do that.
Lee does, yeah. Kristen Dunst's character, yeah.
Lita, and then the girl takes her pictures, and wow, that's great. Clap, clap, clap. What an indictment. And before that, the guy does get his interview. That I was going to tell you that there's two smiles that really struck me in this movie, and the one smile was in the store in that weird little town that they go to, and it's the first time that Kristen really just smiles like a natural smile, a beautiful smile. It was very much deliberate, and I loved her smile. It's like, wow, what a beautiful woman she is and always has been. But she's not pretty before that until she smiles, and that's a natural, beautiful smile. Then later we see another smile from the other photographer, Moura, the actor Moura, Brazilian guy, and he smiles a wicked little smile when they're in the middle of and they're in the urban environment and it's all these bombs happening all around them, and he just smiles at the girl and winks at her kind of, and it's kind of cheesy, but those are the juxtaposition of those two kinds of smiles that exist. One, it's just like, hey baby, I'm getting my kicks, and one that's actually just a moment in life that feels natural and good. So my final, I'm going to borrow this from someone else, but they don't use it anymore. But as far as hate, let's say love, like, don't like, or hate. Where are you coming at?
I liked the message. I liked the allegory of it. But I did not enjoy watching the movie, similar to your experience.
All right, I gotta go with a hate on this movie because of what it tries to do in manipulating the audience, and it's melodrama that's manipulative, and I don't like that. It doesn't stand for anything, doesn't say anything. It tries to get away with being in the middle and be neutral, and that is exactly what art should never do. So that's my take on it, and it is to me an indictment of where we are in terms of creative writing, in terms of art and movie making. I think it is a point which is going to be very interesting when we look back, if we ever do look back, because this is what the end looks like for me when things are being applauded as, oh wow, what a great allegory, when in fact it's not very well constructed in almost any of its aims. I don't think I stand alone in this criticism, and I am very tough on things like this because I don't like people that don't think about things very, very well. And this movie does a great job at avoiding thinking of almost any kind by just dressing things up. It might as well be something from the 1800s, from the 1500s, where you have these morality plays. It might as well be that. Let's just go back to that. Forget Shakespeare. Forget the real thinkers. Forget forget Orwellian thinking. Forget anything, and let's just have this play into a new generation, this generation that's meant to be watched, the millennials and the X and the Z, whatever it is, the young people, and come away with it like, oh yeah, let's pat ourselves again, right on our shoulder, because we're so good, and that's bad, and we wouldn't be like that. And I'm glad that we see that juxtaposition. That's what this movie is about. It's dressing things up. It is not going into the reality of going into someone else's perspective, which takes guts. Why are the two sides fighting? Why no war, and especially the journalist's role in it, gets started without very strong feelings and philosophies and honest to good thinking about who they are. And that's why people fight. They fight because they believe in something. What do these people believe that was so meaningful to fight? We never know, and we never will know. But we know that the people that are supposed to inherit the world are supposed to be like these characters. They're the good ones. They're the ambivalent. They have no opinion. They just stand in the middle, presenting the truth. What truth? It's not the truth. It's not anything near the truth. It's just chaos. And it's just their reaction to it. Their selfish reaction, her collapse is even also selfish. She doesn't take sides, and it leads to, I guess rightly so, her own destruction. That's my take on it.
Well, you took this movie behind the shed, and
I know. I'm sorry, but it's like
no,
how
that's,
I feel.
no, that's
good. I'm good. I'm a good guy. I like liking things.
You like movies. No,
but
and
I
I think my final take is
thoughts.
Great performance by Kirsten Dunst.
Agreed.
She is the redeeming factor. For me, she redeems the movie, and what she has to say about humanity and I think is important, and I think it makes the movie worthwhile. But it is a very hard watch. I do agree. And if it's not supposed to be a hard watch, then the director completely
It's not failed. A hard watch. It's a boring watch. It's really the most boring, disappointing movie.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
I have not seen a movie that's this boring in a long time. I was like,
it's boring and it's gratuitous in terms of the violence. And then at the very end, it has something to say. So
Yeah, I'm out like $27 because I bought the movie too because thinking, oh, I'm just gonna buy it because I don't think Dan's gonna come through anyway. And then I bought it and I ended up with that's even more mad because I was like, well, at least shoot, you want to see a real Civil War if you wanted to really talk sometime later and have a real discussion. Terminator, that's a civil war between artificial intelligence and people. We understand the two sides and we know what they're fighting for, and it's easy.
like
In this case, it would have been like,
actually
what?
It's a more plausible plot, actually, a war against AI than people without political views.
Well,
so,
we took a crack at doing reviews and we destroyed.
Civil War.
I gotta get going.
All right, sounds good.
Sayonara, my friend. Stay out of the Civil War.
Until next time. All right, bye.